I see everyone. And we are live. Hello, everyone. On the, you should see an area where you can chat or send us a question in the chat box. And I think I wrote hello all, and Tony was practicing. I have a question for Roman. So if you see that and you want to send us a message or chat with us as we get going, definitely check in. We would love to hear. We have a bunch of people in the room. I can see numbers of attendees coming in. So there's people here. That's exciting. But feel free to chat with us as we go through, and I'll watch for questions as well. Okay. Let's do.
Hey, it's my friend Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. You're finding people that are hanging out with us. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Teresa Dixon, a realtor with Remax Realty 100 and part of the Wisconsin real estate team. Typically introduce myself as a former educator, but once education gets in your DNA, it's hard to shake. And so even outside the classroom, I think the best bits of life are when I am learning or helping other people to achieve their goals. Some of those people that I help every day are in the house with me. My husband, Tim, is lurking around here somewhere with his phone, watching the webinar as well. He's been working from home for the past month, I think. And I have 4 teenagers who have all decided to make themselves scarce and promise to stay off the Wi-Fi for a little while. But, you know, they've been at home and they've been doing a lot of online learning. And some of the most interesting conversations that we have are about how it's important to take some time to try something new, be brave, do something that takes courage. And I feel like I'm walking the talk tonight by hosting a webinar. So typically love technology, but definitely feeling a little outside my comfort zone tonight. And we had kind of a crazy morning one, so hopefully it's all gonna run really smoothly this evening. I'm joined by some really great people. So I'm gonna ask them to give you a little wave so that you can see who they are. Tony is going to talk to us a little bit about the market, the real estate market. Jennifer will talk to us about mortgages and lending. And Roman will come in with the always important estate planning information. We're coming.
The chat thing says that Anna is having a hard time hearing anything.
Okay, let's check audio. Anna, can you hear us? Okay.
Can all the rest of you hear us?
Hi, this is Roman. Hopefully you can hear me.
Okay. No problem here. Okay. Okay, so we'll keep going, I guess.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So we've got a new platform, Pivot, and that is an idea that's really come to fruition in the last month. And it's kind of an important project that our real estate team has been working on. For myself, my father-in-law, Eddie, passed away about 11 years ago. And at that time, we had a house full of little kids. And suddenly we were part of a great big project, a family project of trying to get Eddie to his medical appointments and also helping him with his home and his estate. And I think my biggest takeaway at that time was how we just didn't know who to trust. And certainly as we navigated through all of the questions and concerns, trust became really important. Today, I have a whole bunch of friends who we talk consistently about how life is changing and how they're having to support their parents through the different stages and lifestyles of of what's going on with them and caring for their homes and helping them out in a way that is different than they had to do when they were younger. And as a realtor, I run into people all the time who are maybe just beginning that idea of empty nesting, something to look forward to for me. But they are really interested in creating a lifestyle, a well-deserved lifestyle. On the other hand, I walk through a lot of houses that have been let go. And typically an older person has not been able to maintain the house. Perhaps they also didn't know who to trust to be able to do it. And it's created a situation where they weren't able to keep up or even increase the value of their home. So keeping all of those things in mind, and perhaps you find yourself in one of those scenarios, we wanted to create a platform that provides a whole family of services to meet the housing and lifestyle needs of 50 plus adults at every stage of life. So much more on that to come in the future. We're just a little fledgling platform at this point. And if you registered, you were on our brand new website, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're working on. And we're so excited that you're here supporting us tonight in our first big project. So with that introduction, I am going to turn things over to Tony. And I have a little bio about Tony that I'll share with you. Tony has been selling real estate in southeastern Wisconsin for the last 33 years. She's been with RE/MAX Realty 100 for 27 of those. And last year, she joined Mike Pelaga's team, the Wisconsin real estate team at RE/MAX Realty 100. Tony started selling in the 80s when interest rates were at 12%, which was a completely different time than it is now, right? And she's seen many ups and downs in the real estate industry. She has a business degree from Marquette University, and she lives in Pewaukee with her son, Alex, who's 13, and her daughter, Sydney, who I think might be on the webinar as well tonight. And she's in San Diego studying at San Diego State University. All right, Tony, I'm gonna advance your slides and it's all you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Teresa. So everybody is wondering about this COVID-19 recession that we're in. I like this slide here. Somebody did this analogy for me with a new tennis ball. And if you take a new tennis ball and crack open the can and you bounce that fresh smelling ball on the concrete, it's going to bounce right back up at you very quickly. That's a V-shaped recovery. The second ball is a ball that's been played with for quite a while, so it doesn't bounce quite like a new ball does, and that would be a U-shaped recovery. The third ball is the tennis ball that the dog's been playing with for weeks, and there's probably some holes in it. You throw that ball down to the concrete, and it's not coming back up at all, and that's an L-shaped recovery. So the experts, go ahead, Teresa, you can change the slide. The experts at all the financial institutions are calling for a V-shaped recovery. That includes Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. As you can see, we're on the downward trend for Q1 and Q2 of this year. Q3 and Q4 is the uptick. So the only one that has us falling back a little bit at the end of Q3 is Wells Fargo. Go ahead, Teresa, next slide. So it's worth to look back at history to see how other recession recoveries took place during other pandemics. So the research goes back at Harvard to the Spanish flu of 1918, and all of the pandemics recouped with the V-shape landscape. So that includes the SARS, the Hong Kong flu, and the Asian flu, and of course then the Spanish flu as well. Next slide. So when we look at history, we can see that this is how pandemics usually reacted during their recessions. So it's a sharp a quick fall with a quick rebound and little damage to our home prices. Next slide. Home appreciation adjustments. So we started out this year in southeastern Wisconsin on an epic year. January and February, we had production that we haven't seen in southeastern Wisconsin in over a decade. So we were on track to have a banner year this year, but then we had COVID hit us in March. So they went from 4.7 annual appreciation speculation, and now they've adjusted it because of COVID-19, and we've got 3% is what they're expecting as far as home appreciations this year. Next year, 4.2%, and then in 2022, 4.6%. So it's looking good. Next slide. So we only have 2 months of this COVID-19 recession going for us to look at, but all of the, according to John Norman from JP Morgan, all signs lead to a V-shaped recovery for this COVID-19 recession as well. Next slide. So Price Waterhouse talked to the industry leaders. They surveyed many companies across the nation, and middle of March, 66% of the companies said that they could get their business back up and running in less than 30 days from COVID. As COVID has dragged out a little bit, we can see that that percentage has gone down. But as of the middle of April, most companies thought that their recovery would be 30 days to 3 months. So that's not a bad outlook at all for all of us. Next slide. Okay, we're talking about recession, but technically it hasn't been declared a recession yet. I think when the next numbers come out, they're going to say we're not headed to a recession. They're going to say we've been in a recession, because here in southeastern Wisconsin and nationwide, we'd seen a downtick in business. So the good news is that a recession does not equal a housing crisis. Next slide. So many of us can remember the Great Recession that was just 2007 to 2009. We all have scars from that. We maybe have still a little panic in us about that. But while the housing industry led that recession, this time the experts are saying that we're poised to bring us out of this recession. Next slide. So we've only seen home prices drop, according to Freddie Mac Home Price Index, drop twice with the last 5 recessions, and that was the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009, and then the Gulf War recession in the early 1990s. And this research goes back all the way to 1975 to 2018. Next slide. So as you can see, other recessions have not done much to the home price changes, with the exception of those 2 recessions. So it looks pretty good for us with this COVID-19 recession that we're in, and I'll prove it to you with some slides that are coming up. Next slide. So what was happening the 6 years before the Great Recession? If you take a look at the chart here, the home appreciation, the price appreciation for our homes was astronomical. Those are the ones in red there. Today, the 6 years leading up to this COVID recession, it looks a lot different. It's normal appreciation. So the 2 scenarios are totally different. And let's go to the next slide, Teresa. And we'll talk about the mortgage industry. Back when we had the housing bubble, the lenders were giving everyone a loan. If you had a pulse and you had what looked to be a wallet in your back pocket, the banks were giving you money. We as realtors would be pre-qualifying our buyers, and we'd be telling them, no, we don't think you're going to be able to get a loan. they'd go to a lending institution and voila, they had a pre-approval letter that they can go house shopping. So everybody was getting a loan. Today, if you look at this graph, that is not the case with the banks. They're being very careful, and we as realtors don't pre-qualify people anymore because there's so much more that goes into a pre-approval with credit scores and things like that, that we just don't have the capabilities to pull up on people. So we right now are sending everybody to the lenders to get their pre-approvals. Next slide. So what else was different back in the Great Recession was the inventory of homes that we had on the market. We had a lot of homes available. Back then, it was a buyer's market. Today, it's a much different scenario. We are low on inventory. So it's a seller's market. And us realtors, we like a healthy market for us is if we have 6 to 7 months of inventory to work with. Next slide. So what was happening was before 2007, people were using the equity in their homes as an ATM machine. They were pulling all that cash out. They were buying fun toys, big nice cars, boats, taking lavish vacations, buying lots of vacation properties, things like that. So between 2005 through 2007, banks were giving out $824 billion out of people's home values for them to spend. Now that scenario that landscape looks a lot different. From 2017 through 2019, the banks have only given out $232 billion out of people's home equities. That total number is less than any one of the individual years that led up to the bubble bursting. And people today are using that equity for good things. They're paying for college education for their kids. They're paying for business startups. They're not buying lavish things for themselves. So it's a much different landscape than we had when our bubble burst. Next slide. The good news is that 53% of all homes in America have at least 50% equity, and 37% of those homes are owned free and clear. So what most people don't realize as homeowners is that they are sitting on a lot of cash. And that's a good thing because right now our stock and our portfolios are not doing very well. So everybody embrace the fact, if you own a home, that you're sitting on a nice little nest egg of cash. Next slide. Everyone's talking about unemployment. You can't turn on a newscast without them talking about how many more people have signed up to get unemployment benefits. So they're guessing worst case scenario is probably we're going to see about 20% unemployment if it gets that bad. But keep in mind that means 80% of the people are still employed and getting paychecks. And those are the people that we're working with today. Next slide. So here, this graph shows that it took a long time to get out of the Great Recession and the Great Depression. So the economists have got at Goldman and JP Morgan have got this one in the V shape. So recovery is going to be much faster than the other two recessions. Next slide. So Ben Bernanke has always said that the Great Recession wouldn't have been as bad as it was for everyone if we didn't have the panic that we had. So I guess today my advice is to stay calm, take care of yourselves and your families, be safe health-wise. Lots of people still have to move. We've got people that are aging out of their homes and it's not safe for them to be there anymore. We've got people being transferred out of the area. We've got people coming into the area. We've got divorces happening. So There's reasons why we need to be out there selling real estate, and the listings that do come on the market are getting offers very quickly. Keep in mind that there is a lot of uncertainty to the times, and people that aren't seeing this information that we're sharing with you today may be a little panicked and a little uncertain of what their future is. So the hard part in today's real estate market is not getting the offer on our properties. It's keeping the offer together and the transaction together so that we all get to a closing table. So while we're realtors, right now we're also psychiatrists. So hang with us, and we will get it done for you too if you need to do something in the near future. Teresa, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. There we go. All right. Jennifer, if you want to pop yourself back on, hopefully. Okay, great. And I'd like to introduce, let's see. I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer, who is a lender with the Bank of England, which is such a fancy place, but it's just in Brookfield. She started there in September 2015. Prior to that, she worked as a realtor, which gives her extensive knowledge in the overall process of buying a house from start to finish, something I certainly appreciate when I get to work with Jennifer. She understands that a mortgage isn't just about the interest rate, it's about the best product to fit your financial needs. And when she isn't working, she is attending Irish dance competitions and shows with her oldest daughter, or letting the youngest run off energy amongst one of Milwaukee's playgrounds. So Jennifer, I will work on your slides and let you take over from here.
How is everybody doing? I realize I asked a question and then nobody can respond back. I apologize. So Bank of England is, we're a family-owned bank based in Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where our corporate office is. So we're not actually, over the pond or anything like that. And being family-owned throughout this crisis that has been happening these last few weeks has really been eye-opening and a huge relief, I guess I would say, with just the transparency and the knowledge and the education that we've been getting from our higher ups with everything that's happening right now. But probably the biggest question that I have been getting lately is because interest rates, if nobody's noticed, interest rates have come significantly lower than they were even a few weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. They've come down. So people said, it doesn't make sense for me to refi. What are the closing costs and how does this get calculated? And, they talk about, they just want me to answer some of those questions. And as much as it's a very individual decision that you need to make once you understand and the numbers, there is zero chance that I can put together a slideshow to encompass everybody's very unique situations and the gray areas that accompany you and your home loan and how your overall family debt structure works. So for the purpose of today, I just took some really simple numbers to try to explain it in smaller terms to just be able to understand that it's not just as simple as an interest rate and how much are your closing costs. And, if you divide all of that and do some math, that is going to automatically give you this break-even point. So if you want to go to the next slide, Teresa. So for this example, we're assuming that somebody purchased their home a year and a half ago. The original sale price was $500,000. So I'm not taking into account any type of increase that has happened with Tony touching on appreciation values and stuff. Believe it or not, there is appreciation in a lot of properties that even were purchased a year and a half ago. So I'm not taking any of that into account for this presentation. We're saying that the loan amount was $400,000. So this particular family put $100,000 down on their property. We are saying that we are saving them 7/8 of an interest point on a 30-year loan, or their second option, which a lot of families have been doing lately, is taking that 30-year and flipping it to a 15 or even possibly a 20-year. But for the purpose of today, we're going to go to a 15 just to see if it makes sense for the individual. Closing costs, just a flat $2,300. And the question is, when are they going to break even? When does the loan actually start saving them money? Next slide. There's a lot of information on this graph. This is really just so we're saying that if the first number there, the existing loan, is the 400,000. So today they're what we're going to call their payoff, 309. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. But there is their principal that they owe, and then we're wrapping those closing costs of $2,300 into it. So their new loan amount on the new conventional mortgage is the $395,230 across the board for the 30-year or the 15-year. The rate on their existing mortgage is 4.875. And we'd be dropping it to 4 or 3.5. These rates are not accurate as to what rates would be today for most people. The APR, and then wrapping in those closing costs, and then just a bunch of simple numbers that really, for the purpose of today, I probably should have taken them out. I apologize. They don't really mean all that much for what we're going into. Next slide. So we're looking at this 30-year mortgage. So if you're thinking, when you're calculating what your current payment is, the $2,755, and your new payment is going to be $2,525, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm saving $230 a month, and my closing costs are $2,300. So simple. It's going to take me 10 months to recoup my costs to actually make this loan worth it. But really, when you're looking at the true value of everything, that's not necessarily the case. So if you're looking at this first bar graph, the interest that you're paying on your current mortgage is $1,589 a month, roughly. And then your principal is $526 a month. And then you flip into your new loan, and because with the lower interest rate and everything, you are actually, if you notice there, you're putting more money per month towards your principal and then less towards your interest. So instead of just $230 a month, because that's what your payment is going down, it feels as if you're saving $329 a month because you're putting a little bit more money towards that principal each month sooner. Next slide. So when you're calculating your break-even point, instead of 10 months, if you calculate the $329 that you're saving, you're really going to break even then at 7 months. So it's just a much better calculation than thinking it's going to take me a whole year. Like, do I really want to do this? It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of paperwork and whatnot. It really, the break-even point ends up being, when you're looking at the true math, a lot sooner than just the simple math from the first example. Next slide. Then we flip into a 15-year. So there's our third bar graph. So overall, you're saving, if you're looking at just interest, so now for a 15-year, you're cutting your payments obviously into 15 years, so there's a separate value add to that. Your interest is $1,153 that you're paying there for that first, for the beginning of that mortgage. And if you look at the 30-year, your interest is $1,303. So at the beginning, your break-even point is something else that you have to calculate. Your savings then on interest is the $436 from your current mortgage that you're currently making. Now, with applying the principal, you can bring the $1,147 into it, that you're putting an extra for the principal to get rid of the fact that you going from a 30-year to a 15-year. But when you're thinking about the costs and what you're actually saving when it comes to interest, next slide, your break-even point on that 15-year mortgage is going to be that 5-month period. So I think that's it for me, Teresa, unless somebody has a question, but I haven't seen anything pop up.
Okay, we'll watch for questions. And Roman is here with us. So Jennifer, if you want to bounce off, there we go. And let me get my cursor back to where it belongs. There we go. All right. Now I'd like to introduce to you Roman, who's going to talk to us about estate planning, which I think is also really relevant right now, perhaps for two reasons. One is that we all say we don't have time to do it, and certainly if we're home a little bit more for the next couple weeks at least, it's a good time to do that. And then I think there's just a lot of things that that I've been thinking about having older, as the kids get older, that I just need to do. So Roman's going to tell us a little bit about that. Let me tell you a little bit quickly about Roman. Since 1999, he's focused his career in the area of estate planning. Directly following graduation from Marquette University Law School in 1981, Roman served as a lawyer on active duty in the U.S. Navy. After leaving the Navy, he returned to Southeast Wisconsin and spent over 10 years as a corporate attorney. His last corporate position was at Golden Books Publishing Company in Racine, which is actually just down the street from where I live. When he entered, and then he went from there, he entered the private practice in Waukesha. Okay, when Roman is, he's married, and he has an adult son and two adult stepsons, right? And was an avid runner when he was younger, completed 7 marathons, he says, and his hobbies include training a golden retriever, catching fish, and I think this one would get some attention, a monthly sheep's head game with his cousins. All right,
Thank you.
Roman, thank you.
Thank you. And I think that I'm going to comment on one of your introductory remarks. It is amazing that in this time, people that have procrastinated on doing their planning are looking at it and now taking advantage of a little bit of downtime to, contemplate their situation. I've gotten calls from people that have been talking about updating their plans for years, and they're now wanting to get it done. So let's give you a little bit of appetizer about estate planning. These slides that are just a few are from a presentation that usually takes about an hour and 15 minutes if questions are many, which oftentimes they are. So I'm going to move through this rather quickly, and then if you have any questions, we look forward to, all of us look forward to answering those. So first of all, we want to talk about what is an estate. And as you can see from the slide, the home there is in the top corner. It's one of the most valuable assets in most estates. And from what we just heard, people are fortunate to have acquired a lot of equity in houses. So that's one thing that when we do estate planning, oftentimes there's a great deal of consideration given as to how a family home is going to be handled. But that's not all that makes up an estate. We also have your bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement accounts, personal property, which is also interesting to discuss with people, who they want those mementos to go to, and then also insurance policies. So those are the main components that when we meet with clients, we want to know what they own in each of those categories so that we can best advise them how to plan their estate. So let's go to the next slide and find out really who needs estate planning. And I think in these times with the COVID-19 virus, we've heard of many young people that have been stricken by this. And so we're really focusing more on every adult 18 and over should have an estate plan. Most people think that it's more for older adults or with families with young children that want to provide guardians in case something were to happen to them. But we will do a very, very basic estate plan for college students. And the reason for this is because Wisconsin is not a state that has a law that allows the closest family members to make decisions for people automatically. Those states that have that, there's about 28 of them, and they're called kinship laws, where a spouse can make a decision for a spouse that's unable, incapacitated at the time, or if a child has an accident and needs a medical decision made when they're unable to make it for themselves. There is no automatic decision maker in Wisconsin. That's why we want to do the most modest plan. And we've had a lot of luck with our clients that have college students and encouraging them to get their basic plans drawn up so that that would not be an inconvenience that would require a guardianship proceeding if the documents were missing. So let's move on to the next slide then. And we see that the idea of the reason to do estate planning is really focusing on two types of events. Most people will go and jump down immediately to after death. But as an estate planner, I find that some of the most rewarding documents that are prepared are those that can help a family through a crisis if there's a time of incapacity. And there's two types of documents that we use. We use one to control financial assets, known as a financial power of attorney. And then we do a series of healthcare documents so that someone can make healthcare decisions if you're unable to make them for yourself. Those documents usually involve a healthcare power of attorney where you name an agent to make a decision for you, a living will, which can be combined as part of the healthcare power of attorney, which lets your healthcare providers know what your thoughts are about end-of-life decisions. And then we also do a HIPAA authorization, which is a release so that your family members are allowed to communicate with your medical team to find out how you're doing. So those are the incapacity documents, especially as individuals get older. The documents can be especially important if we have to do Title 19 or which is Medicaid planning for an individual that may need to go into a nursing home, and we want to focus on seeing that we can get benefits for them. If they can't sign the applications and transfer the assets to make benefits possible, we need those powers of attorney for both finance and healthcare so that these planning steps can be taken. And then, as most people do focus on with estate planning, upon your death, we want to make sure that you're able to control where your assets go, and that this is done in a way that saves legal fees and taxes. So let's move on to the next slide then and talk about some basic estate planning goals. So we utilize these goals when we're meeting with clients to make sure that we cover these overall planning concepts and that everyone is on the same team as far as what is to be accomplished through the planning process. And the first goal is we want to make sure that as long as you are able to control your own property, that will allow you to do that, and will provide a way that your control can even go into the second goal there at a time when you're incapacitated. So you can provide guidelines, you can decide who's going to make decisions for you, and provide what type of decisions should be made. And that can be you controlling things even after you may lack the capacity or the mental abilities to make those decisions anymore on your own. And then the third goal is, again, expanding upon not just who's going to receive property upon your death, but what's the manner in which they're going to receive it. If you have let's say a college student who's, bright, doing well, but maybe would be a little distracted by receiving a large inheritance. We may state that the student is going to receive those funds, but we may set up a trust and have someone else determine how those funds are going to be spent. Goal number 4, we want to make sure that we can maintain your privacy. And a way of doing this is to have a plan that would avoid having to be processed through the probate court system where the records become public. And at most of those times, we'll use a trust or other methods to avoid probate. And then number 5, the final goal is we want to plan for you so that you don't have tax liability or it's kept to a minimum. Now, taxes used to be, back when I started, it used to be the death tax or the estate tax that was the concern for most people. Currently, you have to have a $11 million plus estate before you're subject to that estate tax. So we're, as estate planners, focusing more on capital gains taxes and the income tax. So that is part of the planning process also. We want to make sure when we do your plan that we do it in a manner that the professional fee is appropriate for what you need to accomplish. Not everyone needs a very complex plan. Then we'll recommend a more modest plan and the fee will be less. And we do try to avoid court costs, and the probate process is one of the ways that court costs can escalate. If someone uses for their main estate planning tool a will, that will require probate, and some of those costs then will be incurred. So let's move on to the next slide then. We want you to plan now while you can. Hopefully everyone that's listening tonight is in good health, would be able to plan for themselves, but especially in these uncertain times, we can't be assured that next week or the following month or year that you could actually legally sign those documents. Fortunately, I've had clients that have had setbacks that when they didn't have plans in place, but they recovered and were able then to update their plans. It was a bit scary for them for a while, not knowing, their family not knowing if things could be updated when they were a little out of date. So we want you really to have your plan in place before you need it. And in the case of certain disabilities, if you don't have your plan in place, you may not be given a second chance. So let's move on now to the final slide. And these are 6 of the types of plans we most often talk about in a planning consultation. Most people are familiar with the will, and we use wills in our law firm probably about 20% of the time because wills go through probate and they have costs associated with them. Oftentimes we look at using some of these other tools for planning. We don't recommend the do nothing plan. The good thing about the do nothing plan is it costs nothing now, but usually in the end, it can be the most costly plan because you've totally given up control of the decision making, and usually probate is required to administer the do nothing plan. If you're married in Wisconsin, it's very difficult to not have some property in joint ownership. There are pros and cons to joint ownership, and we want to make sure that it's suitable for you if you have joint ownership of a home, bank accounts, investment accounts, and see how those work. Some people think I'll just give it all away and that'll be my estate plan. The only problem with that is if you feel that if you give your assets away and you need to go into a nursing home or assisted living, that will enable you to qualify for Title 19, or also known as Medicaid, more easily, you may be setting a trap for yourself. So if you are going to want to give away some of your assets now, we want to make sure that it's done knowing what the best process for doing that is. Beneficiary transfers are often very effective ways and common ways of transferring property. And I think it's been about 10 years now since you can have been able to do a transfer on death deed on a home. So you can actually do a beneficiary transfer on a home with the proper deed prepared. One of the issues with beneficiary transfers is that if the beneficiary is a young minor or a young adult that may not have developed the greatest spending habits, it may not be wise for them to receive property outright. And then the final estate planning tool, and I have counseled many clients in setting this up, as a revocable living trust. It's not for everyone, but for many people, especially homeowners, it is a very good way to transfer assets, and it really works best to make sure that those 5 goals that I talked about earlier are met. So when I meet with people and talk about estate planning, my policy is always to do an initial meeting at no cost for prospective clients. That may involve people that have so far done nothing, so there's nothing to review at that meeting of a prior plan. But many times I'm asked to, I'm happy to review an existing plan and advise as to whether it should be updated or not. So that is my short presentation on estate planning, and I'm ready to turn it back to Teresa.
Okay, if I turn this off, and Jennifer and Tony, if you can come back in. Let's see. Oh, it's not making us very big. I don't know why that is, but let's see if we go. Oh, Roman, we lost you. Are you coming?
I still see
I can
Roman.
see myself.
Oh, all right. I don't see you, but that's okay. All right. So at this point, we'd love to know if you have questions for us. So I'm looking in the chat if there are any questions. We're going to give you a second. Now I'm seeing Roman for any questions to come in. While we're watching to see for questions to come in, I did want to mention, I mean, we have a to-do list, and not all of it is super fun, right? We're home and it's kind of a weird time, but it's I think worth it to think about the value of your home, and maybe that'll give you a little bit of joy as we're kind of navigating financial stuff. Definitely consider whether or not it's time to refi, and Jennifer can definitely take you through some of those questions. And I, for one, need to, I have an 18 and 19-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, and it's time to get some of that stuff settled as well. So while we're kind of locked up in captivity here for a couple more weeks, it sounds like we've got ahead of us. It's a good time to work on those things. Okay, let me just check and see if we've got questions coming in. I know one of the questions, go ahead.
And also, because I don't think everyone has received all of our contact information, I think that Teresa, you'll be sending out that information, and I just wanted to welcome anyone if they wanted to send an email, contact me with any questions. I'd certainly be happy to answer those.
Absolutely. So we're going to definitely get out contact information for our presenters tonight, and then of course we'll follow up with more information about Pivot as we put that infrastructure together. So many people on the call tonight are close friends of ours or people that we said, hey, we really want to give this a whirl and would you jump in and do this with us? And so all the feedback is so welcome and we so appreciate you taking the time to do it. One question that came in earlier that I'll share with both Jennifer and Tony is how busy are things right now? So what's going on in your world? Because I think that's a big curiosity. You want to start, Jennifer?
I mean, I cheat a little bit just because of the refi business. So like the refi stuff, it's insanely busy. And then purchases too. I mean, since we started this webinar at 6:30. Well, we were on at 6:15. I got 2 text messages for people needing new pre-approvals tonight. One of them's a brand new buyer and one of them somebody that I've been working with for a while. So, I mean, just in an hour, there's 2. So there is some elements of spring market happening that obviously, and Tony, you can speak to this, but with inventory being really low, like there appears to be, I want to say the other day I had to submit, there was a listing that required a pre-approval letter before they would even allow showings. And I personally, this isn't even my company, it's just me. I had to get 4 letters out for 4 different sets of buyers that were all looking at the same house. So,
and you got them all, so you knew what was happening.
Right. Well, I can't do anything.
No.
Tell people to do that, you know, like, but just, I mean, just an example of how busy things have been. Like it has been busy. So, but a lot of that too is obviously a lot of the refi stuff. So.
I've had text messages coming in while I've been sitting here, but Tony, you take that. How busy have you? What's going on in real estate?
Yeah, real estate's been busy too. The listings that we're bringing onto the market are getting offers very quickly. We have tons of showings on these properties. The market that we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in is the $500,000 and higher properties outside of the metro area. So the further you go out away from downtown, those properties seem to be on the market just a smidge longer. But yeah, I mean, if you need to sell a house now, it's going to get done. We're going to get it done.
All right.
No dip in values at all.
No dip in values, right? No. I haven't seen it either. Okay, I've got a couple comments coming in that I'll just share. Catherine was saying it's such helpful information, and especially the differences of the 15 and 30 year. So the nest egg idea, which I'm excited about. I think that's good news that we should be sharing with people, if nothing else, for having a good sigh of relief that the sky hasn't completely fallen, right? And then from Denise, helpful information, more positive. With people doing school at home, that is widening the summer market. I think that's true as well. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for jumping on the webinar tonight. I will get an email out to everyone with contact information, and you can certainly follow up with any of us with questions about your own personal situation. And I think that's what's the key takeaway is, while we have some time, and hopefully we can take some time, not necessarily typical in a spring market in any of our industries, let's take it and get some of those things that we keep putting off done and see if it doesn't help us all in the long run. Okay. Thank you to Tony and Jennifer and Roman, and we'll be in touch. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Night.